Alright, got my coffee and I got your emails. Thank you everybody who responded to my request. Got a bunch of emails here with people that are currently struggling with some algae issues. And today we're going to review them and maybe give some advice, see how it's going to go. I've never done any of these reaction style videos, so super curious how it's going to go. Okay, so I'm just going to go through these as they came in. So the first email I got was from Adi Guna. So he has a 60 by 30 by 30 centimeter aquarium that is pretty badly infested with algae. Seems like just a lot of diatoms. It's kind of weird after only 2 weeks to have it this bad. But as I read through the email, I think I already know what the problem is. It's simply just too much light. So he mentioned that in the morning sunlight hits the aquascape. He has a light unit, the Candela S series WRGB, and it's on for 8 hours. And if I look at the pictures, it looks like a pretty bright light. Yeah, sorry, I'm going to be very brutally honest with you, and if this was my aquarium I would just start over. At this point all the plants are so badly covered in algae that they're just going to be really struggling to grow, and you can try to remove it manually, but you're going to be uprooting all the plants because they're so infested with algae. So I would just take out all the plants, clean them like under like a running tap, clean all your hardscape, clean the wood, clean the stones, clean the substrate, and just start from scratch. And just start with less light. See if you can do something about the direct sunlight. Maybe you can block the aquarium with some cardboard, something like that. But direct sunlight is not really a big deal in an established aquarium, but if you're just starting from scratch again, you just don't want that. Also, the light seems pretty intense, pretty bright, so either dim it or maybe use some floating plants. But yeah, if I were you, I would just start from scratch. Sorry that I can't give you any better advice, but I think that's the best option here. Okay, let's take a look at aquarium number 2. This one is from Justin. Justin is also from the Netherlands, and he has an aquarium without CO2 and is currently struggling with some hair algae issues. Also some green algae on the rocks I noticed. So let's see what the problem is here. His aquarium is 80 by 40 centimeters. He's using a Drystart E-line, which is quite a powerful light. And what I noticed is that he has a very long photo period as well. So his light comes on at 7 o'clock in the morning and switches off at 11 o'clock in the evening. It's quite long, but I see that he has a very slow ramp up and a very slow ramp down, and he's only using it on 60% maximum. So I don't think that's a problem here. Aquarium has been up and running since February, March, and lately he noticed some more algae issues because of the floating plants. His floating plants kept being pushed under by the filter, so that, yeah, I can confirm that can be, especially redwood floaters, they prefer to just stay on the surface. Not too much water surface movement, and then they will grow the best. If not, they will just die and start rotting. That can definitely cause some algae. He's using Aquasol as a substrate, Amazonia version 2, and he's dosing the same liquid fertilizers I use from Masterline. He's using Masterline 1 and 2, which is basically micro and macronutrients, and he's dosing daily 4 to 5 milliliters, and that is, I think, the problem. For an aquarium without CO2, and he actually has quite a lot of fish in there as well, and fish also provide nutrients. So he has already nutrients from the substrate, he has nutrients from his fish, and then he's also supplementing again with a lot of liquid fertilizer. So I think that's where the issue is, just too much nutrients in the water column. And basically the amount of liquid fertilizer that you're dosing daily, I would just do that weekly. So once a week, 4 to 5 milliliters, that's more than enough already. If you can manage to sort out the issue with the floating plants, then they will start growing better and they can soak up some excess nutrients as well. So I think once you get all that in check, you will definitely see some improvements. Okay, tank number 3 is from Samuel, and Samuel is only 15 years old, and I think this is his second aquascape. Man, honestly, good job, man. This looks really good. I think you've been watching a lot of MD fish tanks. It has an MD fish tanks vibe to it. So there's a lot of things I like about this aquarium. He has a nice mix of fast and slow growing plants. He's using CO2 injection, really good. And he's using floating plants. Big fan of floating plants as well. So yeah, overall, really good job, man, with this aquarium. And to be honest with you, like just looking at this main picture, I don't really see any algae issues. So let's see what the problem is here. This aquarium is 80 centimeters. He's using a fluval light, only on 85% intensity. It's on for 10 hours, which is a bit too long, I think. It's only been 7 weeks since it was planted. He's using Tropica Aquasoil, Tropica Premium nutrition, and he added a wave maker recently to get a bit more flow around the aquarium because his filter is not too powerful. So he included some pictures of algae. So we can see here on the hygrophila there's a little bit of green fuzz algae. Here we have, I think, still a little bit of diatoms on some of the Liliopsis and some of the, I think it's Vallisneria. Okay, so only very little algae issues. And to be honest with you, Samuel, I don't think you really have to change anything. I think these are just still some leftover early algae issues. They will easily go away by itself. If I'm just looking at your fish stocking, I see a lot of tetras, I see some rasboras, some German blue rams, but I don't really see any like algae cleanup groups. I don't see any Otocinclus, I don't see any amano shrimp. Maybe you have them, but they're just not visible on the picture. But if you would have them, I think they will definitely take care of those small algae issues. Another thing you might be able to improve is the CO2. So your CO2 diffuser is all the way on the right, and it's not really getting much flow there. So the CO2 bubbles are basically going straight towards the surface. So maybe you can remove the wave maker or actually place it in a different position so it's more pointing towards the right of your aquarium. So it's more pointing towards the CO2 diffuser. And that way the CO2 will get better distributed throughout the entire aquarium. And I think that will also just be very helpful in general. Maybe you can hide the wave maker somewhere on the left side behind that big piece of wood. I think that will definitely just improve the look of your aquarium. But I think in general, I wouldn't really worry too much about the small algae issues. Maybe get some extra amano shrimp or Otocinclus to take care of that. Actually, one more thing I would change. Again, looking at the liquid fertilizers, you're using Tropica Premium, 1 pump per day. Tropica Premium is only micronutrients, so it doesn't contain any nitrate or phosphate, which is okay because that can come from your substrate and also from your fish basically. If you would only dose 1 pump per week, I'm sure that will be plenty enough. So yeah, just reduce those liquid fertilizers. And maybe at some point after your aquasoil is a little bit depleted, you might have to upgrade to some extra nitrate and phosphate dosing, but for now, just 1 pump per week of Tropica Premium is more than enough. Okay, next up we have a nice corner tank from Algae. Hope I pronounced that correctly. Nice corner tank with some beautiful Bosemani rainbows, looking really good. This is also a new aquascaper, so he only started 4 months ago. So, not too bad, man, not too bad. But he's suffering from some black brush algae on the wood and on the dragon stones. So I see that he has already treated it with liquid carbon. So it's already turning purple and dying off, so that's good. But BBA is definitely a CO2 related algae issue. And he mentioned that the aquarium has been set up for 4 months. But we've only just begun using CO2. So I'm not sure if the BBA happened before you introduced the CO2 or after that. Yeah, just not sure about that. But maybe a few things that I see that can be improved. So the photo period is quite long, it's 10 hours. I would reduce that to 8. And you mentioned that you shut off the CO2 2 hours before the lights go off. And I would definitely change that. So either have your CO2 turn off at the same time as the lights, or what I do is like maximum an hour before the lights go off, turn off the CO2. I think 2 hours is a bit too long. I also see on the pictures that you have a CO2 drop checker, that's very good. But it does look very dark on the picture. So I'm not sure if it's because it's very early in the day and it will turn lighter green later. But maybe you can check that. Just make sure you're injecting enough CO2 and make sure that CO2 levels are stable. If I look at your CO2 setup, it looks pretty good, but I'm not sure about this CO2 regulator. It's not something I've seen before. Just make sure your CO2 levels are stable and then you should be okay, because besides that you're doing everything right. You have a nice aquasoil as a substrate, you're not dosing too much liquid fertilizer, and I mean the light is not too powerful and it's not on for that long, so I think the light and the nutrients is not really the issue here, definitely CO2. So just make sure you keep your CO2 levels stable, should be fine. Okay, the next one is pretty crazy. This one is from Roy, another Dutch guy, and this is his first aquarium. Wow, beautiful. Roy is 29, lives in the Netherlands, never had an aquarium before, straight away first aquarium, 450 liters. That takes guts, man. And honestly, it's looking really, really good. So he is currently struggling with some algae issues, mainly hair algae, I guess. So let's see. He has a very beautiful hardscape. This is January after planting. And then this is, I guess, a couple months later, completely grown in. Beautiful hair grass carpet. Some nice stems as well. Looking really, really good. And then all of a sudden he has some blue-green algae. So he did a blackout to get rid of the blue-green algae. So this was 3 weeks ago. And this is today. So a lot of algae on the hardscape, some in the moss as well, some in the hairgrass. So that's weird. So exactly 3 weeks ago it looks like this. Super lush, basically no algae in sight. So all of a sudden there's a lot of hair algae. The dual Rio 450 liters, standard lights. No, this is interesting. His light is only in 2 phases. So his light comes on at 7:30 till 10:30, and then there's like a little siesta, and then it goes on again at 5 o'clock till 8 o'clock. So the lights are only on for 6 hours in total, so that's quite short. So it started on the 30th of January, 20 weeks ago. He used 4 90-liter bags of Aquasol, ADA Amazonia, and lava split underneath the soil. And then he's using the all-in-one liquid fertilizer from Planted Box. And he's dosing 150 milliliters every week. Okay, Roy, before I say anything, I mean, if this really is your first aquarium, then man, hats off to you. If this is the result you can achieve from your first aquarium, a massive aquarium as well, 450 liters, it looks really, really good, man. Yeah, just unfortunate that you got some blue-green algae. I think after that kind of start to go down a little bit, I guess. So I think there's 2 potential issues here. If I look at the pictures, here's the picture from the blackout, and I can definitely see some light here. So I'm not sure, but it could be that there's some sunlight hitting your aquarium. Maybe I'm wrong, but that could be one of the issues. Maybe the reason why you got the blue-green algae. Another issue I think is again the liquid fertilizer. 150 milliliters of liquid fertilizers every week. I know that's the recommended dose from Planted Box, but you are using Aquasol. And you said you use 4 9-liter bags of Aquasol, which is a lot of soil, has a lot of nutrients from it as well. I mean, it's only been since the end of February, so there's still a lot of nutrients in the soil as well. So besides the liquid fertilizer, I'm not sure. I mean, to me, it's very weird that 3 weeks ago you had a beautiful algae for your aquarium, and now all of a sudden it's infested with green hair algae. I think something must have kind of just upset the aquarium, so I think something went wrong. I don't see any CO2 drop checker in here, so if I were you, I would just double check your CO2 system, see if everything is still correct, if you're still injecting enough CO2. Because, I mean, if the aquarium is stable, then even the amount of liquid fertilizer shouldn't really be an issue, but I think there's something more going on that I just don't have the details right here. So if I were you, I would just double check your CO2 system again and see if everything is correct here, because yeah, such a beautiful, healthy, stable aquarium shouldn't really be infested with algae all of a sudden. So I hope that helps. Good luck. Okay, the next aquarium is from a channel member, Ember Frame. He has some black dust on a few plants, so let's check it out. 250 liter aquarium, satellite 120 centimeters, 6-hour photo period, Aquasol capped with sand, no fertilizer. He is using CO2. So I can be very quick about this Ember Frame. I see that you have 2 filters, and the small internal one is like blowing a load of oxygen bubbles, and that's just not really what you want in a planted aquarium. It's just removing all the CO2 that you have. You're injecting CO2, but at this point it's just pretty pointless, because all those extra oxygen bubbles in the aquarium are just removing CO2 constantly. So if you want to keep that filter, fine, but just find a way to prevent those oxygen bubbles, and that should definitely help. So I have another one exactly with the same issues as Ember Frame. This one is from Ahmed from Saudi Arabia. He has a nano aquarium and he's struggling to grow Monte Carlo and Alternatera Reineke Mini. And I was just looking at these pictures, and he has a small internal filter here. And as you can see right here, there's again a lot of oxygen bubbles coming out of the outflow from the filter. And it seems like over here there looks like a small airline tubing that's drawing in oxygen from outside the tank over there. A lot of people just don't know this, but in a planted aquarium you don't want to have this filter that's blowing a lot of oxygen, because it's just removing CO2. So Ahmed, if I were you, I would just remove that airline tubing from your filter so it's not drawing in any air anymore. And it's just pushing water around, cleaning the aquarium, but no oxygen bubbles. That's just not what we want. Okay, next up we have another Dutch guy with a beautiful, beautiful nano aquascape. I think this is a Dental Escapers tank, 35 liters. We love those tanks with the rounded corners. It's been up and running for 4 months. Man, looking really, really good, man. Hats off to you. This one is from Timothy, Fresh Waterscapes on Instagram, and he's been aquascaping for 2 years. He said his aquarium was running really, really good, but now recently he started noticing some black brush algae on some of the like Busa flandera, a little bit of the hair grass as well. So he's wondering if I can help. And man, to be honest with you, I've been reading through your email. I don't know if I can help you because it seems like you know exactly what you're doing. Good light, it's on for 8 hours. You're using CO2. The only thing that's interesting that your CO2 diffuser is on your filter inlet. Timothy is using an external filter, so the CO2 is going in his filter actually, instead of being blown around his aquarium. So I guess your external filter is sort of like a CO2 reactor. I've heard people do that. I don't really have any experience with that myself. But yeah, it seems like it's working all right for you. Maybe, I don't know, I don't think that's the issue here. To be honest with you, the only thing that I can think of is that maybe your light is a little bit too strong. I mean, you're using the Gyros WRGB2. It's a very, very powerful light for only 30 liters, and you're running it on 100% for 8 hours. So, okay, for 100% for 7 hours, sorry. Yeah, I don't think that's really the issue, but maybe just reducing the intensity a little bit might help with getting rid of the algae. Yeah, sometimes black brush algae is just a mystery, and I think the only thing you can just do here is just trim the affected leaves, or maybe with the Busa flanderas and the Nubias, just spot treat it with some liquid carbon. And other than that, I think your aquarium is doing pretty good, so I wouldn't really change too much. Okay, so next up we have a bit of a sad story, another new aquascaper. This aquarium is from Roman Emil, and he started 2 months ago, and basically he was doing everything right, and he really invested a lot of money in his setup as well. I mean, optic white aquarium, he was using an ADA Aquasky RGB60, it's a very expensive light. He was only running it for 7 hours per day. He was using ADA power sand, Tropica specialized, pressurized CO2 pH controller, so definitely a high budget setup going on here. And Roman mentioned that everything was going well, but then his CO2 regulator had some issues, so he had to return it to the store, and it took 10 days to fix the regulator. So 10 days without CO2, he did reduce the light a little bit, I think. But yeah, 10 days without CO2 is of course just going to give you a lot of issues. So it kind of sucks. I mean, I'm not a store owner, but if I was a store owner and somebody would come to me with a faulty regulator that needed fixing, I don't know, I would just see if I can borrow them a regulator or something like that. Anyway, I think his CO2 is back on, but yeah, of course his aquarium is infested with algae, and he's basically asking me if we can still turn it around or if we should start over again. Well, I think, Roman, we can definitely turn this around. I mean, I only see green algae, so that's good. I don't really see any stubborn black brush algae. I think most of the plants are just covered in a layer of green algae, which is not too bad. I see you also have a nice cleanup crew, some Otosynchilus, Amano shrimp, Cleton snails, so that's good. I think to turn this aquarium around, the main thing you must do is to just temporarily diffuse the light. I mean, that Aquasky RGB60 is a very, very powerful light. And right now your plants are suffering because they're covered in algae, so we just have too much light in your aquarium. So first thing I would do is just buy floating plants, add a lot of floating plants in here, because I don't think you can dim the ADA Aquasky RGB. So we need to diffuse the light. Other than that, I wouldn't change anything about your liquid fertilizer routine. Tropica specialized, 1 pump per week, it's perfect. Just make sure you keep those CO2 levels stable now. I hope you invested in a good regulator that's not gonna be faulty again. Yeah, I would just start dosing some liquid carbon. So the liquid carbon will definitely help to get rid of the green algae. And besides that, just manually removal. So start scrubbing those rocks with a toothbrush or something like that. Yeah, add some fast growing plants as well, because right now you only have mostly slow growing plants, some AR Mini, some Monte Carlo. So yeah, floating plants, fast growing plants, keeping the CO2 level stable, and yeah, adding liquid carbon. I think that's it, man. I think you can turn it around, definitely. And I wish you the best of luck. Don't give up. Okay, so the next one is from Patrick from India, and his email was titled BBA Garden, so Black Brush Algae Garden. And I think we can see why. The aquarium looks good. I mean, the plants look super healthy. It's just that his rocks are covered in black brush algae. Now, I'm pretty sure Patrick already knew the issue. He was basically struggling with a faulty regulator that was giving unstable CO2. And yeah, unstable CO2 levels is definitely going to give you black bush algae. I mean, yeah, that's just the way it is. Especially if you're running a high light, then fluctuating CO2 levels is just the recipe for disaster. So I think he already treated it with some liquid carbon as well. So I hope your rocks are clean now, and I hope you can manage to keep your CO2 level stable, and then you should have no issues, because it seems like you know how to grow plants, so I don't think you have any issues there. So yeah, best of luck, Patrick. Okay, here we have another example of fluctuating CO2 levels. This one is from David. David is only 14 years old, only recently got into aquascaping. Man, hats off to you, David. That's a good looking aquascape. It's a shame you have some BBA issues, but you already know what the issue is, so I don't really have to help you, I think. Basically, David bought a cheap CO2 regulator that was very hard to adjust, and he had fluctuating CO2 levels, and that led to some algae issues. But I think right now he managed to set his CO2 to the correct levels, so hopefully they shouldn't be fluctuating anymore. Yeah, I think once you get your CO2 level stable, the algae will slowly disappear by itself, and if you want to help it, you can of course spot dose it with some liquid carbon or hydrogen peroxide. Next up we have a nanocube from Jeffrey. Jeffrey did a 12-week Drystart, so he basically got a full carpet of HC Cuba and some Potassium helferi or Downoi, and he flooded the aquarium 2.5 weeks ago and now has a little bit of algae on the rocks mostly. To be honest with you, Jeffrey, I think these are just early startup algae issues, nothing to really worry about. I think once your aquarium is cycled, I would suggest to add some algae eaters, maybe some Cleton snails, Holosynchus or Amano shrimp, or all three of them of course, and they will definitely take care of that. These are very soft algae, you can also easily manually remove them, so I wouldn't worry about it too much. I've been reading through your email, it seems like you're doing everything right. 8-hour photo period, not too intense light, not too much liquid fertilizers, CO2 is fine, so I think this is just a matter of a little bit of patience, and within a few weeks your aquarium will stabilize and you will have an algae-free aquarium, so keep doing what you're doing, good stuff. So the emails keep coming in, but I think we're going to wrap it up here. I think this was long enough for the first episode. I really enjoyed it, and I think we should do a few more of these. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. Should I do more of these reaction type videos, algae review videos? Yeah. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. Don't forget to smash that like button, and I'll see you next time. Take care.